I'm Michelle Zelsman, realtor at Coldwell Banker Realty in Alexandria, Virginia, and I'm here today with Rob Clark. He is my favorite lender in the entire world with guaranteed rate affinity.
I'm glad to be here, Michelle. Thank you for joining me. Yes, I'm Rob Clark, and I am a mortgage loan officer, and I've worked with Michelle and realtors in the Washington, D.C. area for the last 32 years. And I love what I do. It's fun. I have a good time. I meet a lot of nice people along the way. And we what do I do? I come up with solutions for people. That's really it. Every single transaction is a puzzle, and it's fun putting it together and trying to show people the best way for them to finance a property. It's it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. I enjoy it.
And so today we're here to talk to you about just some of the different things that are happening in the market with interest rates, inflation, just some different, are we in a bubble? Just different things that are coming up in the conversation. So we hope you'll sit by and enjoy the rest of the show.
So you have all these people who are coming of age right now, right? And they're all going to end up buying in the next 4 to 5 years. They may not know it right now, but they're going to. They're going to get married. Their wife's going to want a house. They're going to have kids. They want stability. They want schools. No different than what we've seen for the last 30 years. It's just that the population is growing.
Yep.
And then you look at the population of those buyers is growing. The people that are coming of age who are going to buy. It's no different than that probably when you have this group of population that turned 21. You probably had an uptick in what 21-year-old people do, whatever that might be,
Yeah.
But you start to look at, the bigger picture, which is, what are these people going to do? They're going to either rent or they're going to buy. It's so expensive to rent, then you're going to go buy, And the last couple of years, because of the supply chain stuff, we have issues where people can't buy. I had a guy this weekend who called me as a past client. I've done 2 loans for him here in Northern Virginia. The last time he bought a place here, which was like 2.5 or 3 years ago, he owned a lot in Charlottesville. He calls me on Saturday. He's on the way to Charlottesville to go look at a house. He's like, guess what? He's like, I'm not going to build on that lot that I own. He's like, I've looked at it. He's like, I can't build what I want to build for less than like $1.2 million. He's like, I can go buy it and have it be cheaper than that. He's like, I'm just going to sell the lot. So guess what? There's one less house that's going to be built right now. So guess what? There's now one more person who's in the mix and who wants to buy that next resale that comes in the market. How many of those people are there where they're like pricing out new construction? They're like, well, gee, I can't build what I want to build for less than a certain amount. I guess I better go buy a resale, so that you got that happening too. And also around here, all right, where are you going to build? I mean, tell me where there's a buildable lot within a half mile of where we're sitting right now. Is there one? There probably is. There's a tear down house. There's, whatever. But at the end of the day, you're going to tear down the house. You're going to then get a construction contract. What you're going to build there going to be any cheaper than what you could buy down the street where somebody already did that? Probably not.
Well, and one of the things that I've been hearing recently from my builders is that, a builder has to have a certain margin.
Sure.
And if they can't get that margin, they can't build.
Yep.
Because they're in it to make money. They've got to make money.
Yep.
And with the cost of not just labor, but the cost of materials, the margins just aren't there. So where they may have been building, some of the custom homes where they may have been building 4 or 5 homes in a year, they may be scaling way back to only building 2 or 3. Because they just can't. They just can't. And to your point of where are we going to build? The thing that we don't think about is we don't think about how finite land is. Yep. We have a very distinct finite amount of land.
Yep.
And so, where are we going to build? And so that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing, for example, we've been watching it for years in Arlington. You tell me there's a guy I know. He's been in his house since 1965. He's 90 years old.
Yep.
Odds are he's going to be selling in the next 10 years.
Yeah. Or his heirs will be, right? I mean, it's just, the reality
exactly.
Of the
it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And while it's not a great lot, the location is phenomenal. That house, we know exactly what's going to happen with that house. We've seen it over and over and over. I've wondered a lot down here in Mount Vernon and what's happening in the Mount Vernon area. I'm watching it. You know,
Yep.
you're
Yep.
hard pressed to find a house in Mount Vernon right now. It used to be that it was the one area in our area that where you could find a nice house that was really well built, maybe needed some updating, but and you could find it under $1 million. Not
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
not with what's
Yeah.
happened in
Yeah.
this recent market. But what I am seeing is over and over and over, Alexandria, Mount Vernon is becoming the new Arlington. And McLean
Yeah.
as well. McLean, some of those old, very stately homes are being bulldozed over,
Yeah.
and new places are coming up.
Yeah. Or people are throwing a bunch of money into it to rehab them,
Yep.
to make them larger. Yeah, I mean, there's a limited amount of land available, and then you still have got the thing that I hear from people over and over and over again, which is that I want to be in the neighborhood where the good schools are.
Yes.
It's
Oh,
schools.
God, yeah.
And that is the driving factor for like half of the home purchases, I'm
Yes.
convinced, or thereabouts, is that hey, I need to be in a different school zone. Everybody wants the best for their kids, right? And so it's like, all right, well, we're going to go ahead and move from A to B to be in a different school zone. Well, guess what? Everybody else wants the same thing. And I say this to people every day where it's like, we're talking about multiple offers on properties, right? People think that the whole multiple offer thing came about because of COVID. Absolutely not.
It was way before.
We're seeing that it was happening in 2015,
Yep.
the spring of 2015, the spring of 2016, 17, 18. Each year, it was the same exact thing, that right after Christmas, January, houses would start to hit the market. But guess what? There were way more buyers out there looking to buy than there were houses that were hitting the market, and we saw multiple offers. And again, it's the area that we live in is so mature. If you want to be within 10 miles of the White House, like where we're sitting right now, or maybe it's 12 miles, whatever it is, I don't know, as the
Or
crow
10.
flies, it's 10, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, what are your choices? Where else can you go and buy what it is that you're looking for? Okay, yeah, you can buy it in Alexandria, okay? Or you can go around the Beltway and you can buy it in Fairfax.
Yep.
Or you could go around the Beltway a little bit further and you could buy it in Reston, or whatever, right? They're all about the same cost, right? And there's different pockets where the cost is going to be more because the schools are great, pockets where it's going to be a little bit less for the same house where the schools are maybe not as great. But at the end of the day, it all ties into that, right? And the reality of it is that there are more people who want to be here than there are houses available for sale, you know? And why is that? Because the job market here is as good as it is any place in the whole country, and it continues to grow.
Yeah.
And there's how many places, everybody talked about 3 years ago, Amazon. I've done at least 15, if not 20 or 25 or maybe even 30 loans for people that work for Amazon. I'd never done a loan for anybody up until 3 or 4 years ago that worked for Amazon. I've got one that's closing this week for somebody who works for Amazon. They're a big employer, but it's not just them.
Yes.
It's all the other companies that also have people here that want to go after Amazon. They're providing the support to get the stuff to your house. I don't know how much that's direct Amazon versus contractors, but I know that there's lots of contractors who are now in the fold helping them to do what they need to do. So there's all sorts of jobs that are here now.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because right after Amazon made their announcement, it's funny because I was selling a house on Glebe Road. It was literally on Glebe Road, and I couldn't get it sold.
Yeah.
And Amazon made their announcement and had multiple offers. Well, okay, thank you, Amazon. And I knew it was going to be a tough sell because it was literally on Glebe Road. But so I went to an event, and there was an economist from George Mason who was talking about exactly the point you're making, and it was phenomenal. He said, all right, so Amazon's going to open up their shop in 2030. So we've got a period of time where we're Amazon free. But exactly to your point, he said, we're all focused on the 25,000 people that Amazon is going to bring for HQ2, but it's a lot more than is 25. It's a total of about 350,000 people who are going to be brought to the area to support Amazon.
Right.
So it really is a much larger number. The other thing too that you think about is we're the federal government, and the federal government will never shut down.
Yep.
And yeah, we have that ceremonial shutdown, but at the end of the day, we really will never shut down. So it gives us an economy that is unique to any other part of the country.
Yeah.
And so we're protected with that. And that one really hit me hard when, as a listing agent, as COVID was first starting, and you remember this well because we had very, very, very specific conversations about but how well employed is this person?
Yeah.
Is that person
Yep.
is that person who's employed today going to be employed in 30 days
Right.
when the loan closes?
Right.
And I would talk to people and I say, all right, I generally don't ask this question, but where do you work? I work for the feds. You're good.
Right.
You're
Right.
good.
No,
You have
there's
to
no
really,
doubt. There's no doubt.
And
There's no
and
doubt.
right now, especially at the beginning of COVID, we need you working. We need the federal government to keep going.
Yep.
To,
Yep.
And so, but it really hit me hard about how, in Washington D.C. and this market, it's a very different market than out in the Midwest.
When you look at we talked about the bubble before, right?
Yes.
A little bit. And when you look at that, when bubbles have happened, it almost always is somewhat influenced by there's something bad that happened with the job market, right?
Right.
People need a place to live. They're gonna pay to keep a roof over
Yes.
their head, whether it be rent, whether it be a mortgage, if they are able to retain their employment. If they become unemployed, then at that point, that's when you start to have problems, right?
Right.
And if you look at it, the unemployment rate in our immediate area is as low as it is any place in
Yes.
the whole country. You're going to always, and I think about this. I think about all right, going back to let's go back 15 years. How many people do I know, and I'm natively from here, so I know a ton of people here.
Yep.
How many people do I know that got laid off of their jobs, but then weren't able to go out and get another job 2 weeks later? Number one, I don't know that many that have been laid off, period, right?
Same.
Very, very few.
Same.
But the ones that did, guess what? They were able to go out and get another job in whatever their chosen line of work is in a week, you
Yes.
know? And so I don't know of anybody who's lost their job and then can't go out and get a new job. You know where that happens, it seems to me, most of the time, is it happens in, people talk about company towns, right?
Yes.
So you've got back in the day, and what comes to mind is towns in the Northeast, like in Buffalo or in upstate New York or Cleveland, where you have a factory and 80% of the people work at that factory, and then all of a sudden that factory manufacturing gets shipped to Mexico or wherever, to China.
Yep.
Then all those people lose their jobs. But here, people talk about DC being a company town, like a federal government town. It's not anymore. There's as much high-tech stuff here,
Yes.
and as much other business as government. So you've got the best possible situation, I think, here,
Yep.
where you've got lots of private industry, and you also have lots of government, and you have more and more private industry that wants to come here and solicit the federal government. I can't remember who it was, last week or the week before. There was another big employer. Boeing, that's who it was, right?
Yep.
Just announced, yeah, right,
Yep.
that's who it was, right? And I'm that's, how many jobs is that? And again,
Yes.
it's all right, it's not just Boeing. It's all right, well, who makes all the parts for Boeing? All right, well,
Right,
they want to
exactly.
come be here and be able to talk to
Yes.
the Boeing people. So,
Yeah. All the lawyers are going to be supporting Boeing, and
Right,
and it goes
right.
way down to people are going to be personally helping the employees of Boeing.
Yep,
Do you
yep,
know?
yep.
It really goes. It trickles way down.
You've got the West Coast, Silicon Valley.
Yep.
I think I keep hearing here and a little bit in Raleigh
Yes,
area are
yes.
the two high-tech hubs on the East Coast. Guess what? That's not going away.
No.
The employers that are the high-tech employers, the tech side of it is going to only continue to be a larger and larger and larger piece of the overall job market and economy, right? I think that we can all
Absolutely.
agree on that. So anyway, it's an interesting phenomenon, and people talk about here, why here versus someplace else? Why here? Because the job market's good.
Yeah.
And as people continue to be employed here, and as companies continue to hire people here, the population grows. As the 30-year-olds grow, and there's a larger number of them, guess what? They all want to buy houses too.
Exactly.
It is not going to be cheaper. I'm convinced it's not going to be cheaper to buy a house 2 or 3 years from now. Throw interest rates to the side. Who
Yep.
cares what interest rates
Yep.
do? They're going to go up. They're going to come back down. But it doesn't matter if you have 7 people on average, or whatever it might be, who want to buy every property on the market right now. Let's say that half of them decide that they're going to drop out because interest rates continue to drive higher. Okay, there's three and a half. There's
right.
3.5 people for every house.
Exactly.
There's still not one for one, right?
Right,
So when does that
exactly.
stop?
Yeah.
And again, I don't know when it stops, but it hasn't stopped in an awful long time, and I don't see it stopping all of a sudden tomorrow. So if somebody who's looking to buy a house, if they're going to buy a house, you're going to go out and pay a certain amount for it. I think that if you look at that same house, you look at what it's going to cost you a year from now, payment-wise, throw it to the side because that's a function of the rate also. But the actual underlying value of the house, it's going to be higher a year from now than it is now.
Yeah.
There's no question.
It's funny too, because this morning I was reading an article, and the article was talking about, it actually said, stop Googling bubble.
Yeah.
And one of the I know, right? But it's true, you know?
Yep.
But one of the things that I loved about that particular article is it talked about how actually we're at a very high employment rate. Maybe one of the higher, and you can look at those, look at that data different than I do. And there was actually one part of this, it was an economist who was saying that interestingly enough, there are a lot of jobs that are unfulfilled.
Right.
And so we actually, and maybe a reverse that we haven't seen in the past, because we do get so focused on the unemployment numbers, but maybe we're in a whole different.
Full employment also is inflationary because what happens is that the business that needs the employee that was going to pay $20 an hour, they're like, they don't get anybody. They're like, I got to pay somebody $25 an hour to come do the job, and that's inflationary, right?
Yeah.
So
That's interesting.
It's part of what's going on right now is that because we are at full employment now, the other side of it, and I don't think it really so much happens here, but in other parts of the country from data that I've seen, is that you have, as an interesting phenomenon, a lot of people who, in the wake of COVID, that were in hospitality businesses and in businesses that couldn't operate during 2020 effectively, that a lot of the people who worked in those types of jobs didn't work for a while. They're still not back at work now.
Yep.
And so what's happened is that those people who might not be of retirement age, but let's say that they're in their 50s and they're like getting close, they're like, screw it, I'll figure out something to do that's kind of half-assed for the next while, and then I'm never going to go back and work full time doing what I was doing before, right? Or they're trying to find something different to do. So. And once they've stopped receiving unemployment benefits and such, then they don't count any longer in the count.
Right.
So the unemployment rate might say it's 3%, but yet you have
it's a little skewed.
Right. You have another 3% of people. Let's say if you got a 3% unemployment rate, you've got another 3% of people in a given area that haven't returned to work that just aren't being counted anymore, but they're really available, And again, maybe some of these people, if the wage goes from $20 to $25, they say, okay, it's worth it to me now to get off the couch and go take the $25 an hour job.
Yeah.
So anyway, and I think part of it is also that we as an economy, paid the benefits to these people for probably a bit longer than we should have. And it's like, okay, COVID, at least in our immediate area, we don't see much of an impact of it anymore. So get back to work. We're going to stop paying you to stay home. Get back to work, right?
Exactly.
Anyway.
Well, and I love that some of the things that happened as a result of COVID, I feel for people who lost people, hands down. I mean, it's devastating. It's really devastating. And I have a few people who lost people to COVID. But there were some things in COVID that forced our hand at, for example, let's just look at the technologies. There were technologies that were out there, they were available to us, we weren't using them because we were so stuck in an old school thinking, and all of a sudden we had to pivot, we had to do some work differently to keep the economy going. Working from home, I mean, one of the reasons that I ended up in real estate is because I had a boss who was anti-work from home, and I'm like, dude, I actually get more work done working from home because I'm less chatty, and I can be a little bit chatty. So I get more work done at home, right? I was talking to one of my clients, and this was right around the time so we had the lockdowns, and people were, okay, go home, hurry up, go home and work. And then there was that first round, if you remember that first round of people saying, hey, I think we're going to start coming back to work. And look at it, we're 2.5 years into this thing, and there are people who are going back to work, but on minimal days, but not the same thing. But I remember having this conversation with her and saying, what are you guys going to do? She worked for a big corporation. And she said, we're really looking at shutting down our offices. And having people continue to work from home because we're finding people are more productive, there's more profitability, and let's face it, the bottom line of a business is what's our bottom line? What's my profit margin? And if they can remove that one piece, that is the biggest profit sucker,
Yep.
which is the overhead of the commercial building. They're cutting out all those commercial buildings, and they're holding a couple of them, and they're going to hotel.
Yeah.
And so I'm seeing more and more of that, but more people than not, I'm hearing them. Yeah, I'm still working from home.
Yeah. You know,
And-
there's two different things that I'm seeing, like things that have been happening more recently. So number one, like I have a client who is going to settlement next week who's buying a condo in DC. They bought a house out in the suburbs in Maryland, like, I don't know, 15, 18 months ago, like the beginning part of last
Yep.
year. They'd moved here from California. They bought a house. They were working remotely. The half of the couple has to now be in the office, and they work for a big corporation. I can't remember who it is, but bottom line is they just bought a condo in DC. They're keeping the house in the suburbs. It's kind of out. It's I don't know, probably 35 miles outside of DC.
Yep.
They're calling it the farmhouse, and they're going to keep that and
Yeah.
do weekends there, and then work from the condo in DC. So you got, now these people own two places, and they're looking at it to go, okay, well, I did really well on this house. I need to buy a place in, closer.
Yep.
I'm not going to sell that place. We're going to use it as a second home just as easily. They may end up deciding that they don't want to own both and have one of them vacant a lot, but maybe they rent it, whatever.
Yeah. So you bring up a point that's very interesting to me, and it's the equity that people have earned in their home.
Yep.
We did a deal in December, and I'm talking to the guy, and he's like, I said, dude, you bought at the exact right time. He's like, I know, my God, I got this great interest rate. And he goes, and look at how much money that when I look at like the sales in my neighborhood, I'm already $50,000 up. And I'm like, hang on, in a week you'll be another 50 up. But so there is this great equity that people have built in their homes. If they bought, I keep telling people it's really a buyer's market.
Yep.
You buy right now, and yes, the values are going to keep going up. So, but some people, I've got a couple of people who've been reaching out to me saying, Michelle, I've got this great equity. I'm not really interested in selling my home, but what I am interested in doing is letting this equity work for me. How can I make this equity in my home work for me? Are you seeing people come to you with that sort of thing and maybe looking to buy? You're talking about the people in, with the condo. Are they looking for investment properties, and are they turning, especially, we ourselves are looking at the fact that, stock market values of, I don't want to say crash, but it feels like it.
They're down.
Yeah. They're just down.
Yeah.
We know they'll come back up,
Yeah.
but we're also looking at real estate as real estate has not ever hurt me. I look at, people hear me tell the story all the time. My grandmother gave me a loan of or not a loan. When she passed away, I got an inheritance of $10,000 with the stipulation the only way I could use that money was as a down payment for a house.
That's cool.
And so I bought my first house that way.
Yep.
I sold it. I sold it at the height of the 2008 market, sold it high, and now I own a house, and that house is worth 1.2.
Yeah.
And it's just rolling that money in. So using the equity in that house, how can I use that equity in the house to buy investment properties? Are you seeing people do that sort of thing?
Yeah, we are. We're seeing that. We're seeing people that are bought their house, whatever, whether it be 2 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago, that are now moving to a different house for whatever
Yep.
reason. And a lot of them aren't selling. And that's part of the exasperating the problem with the inventory right now. People have got a 2.5% or a 3% loan on the house. There's not a whole lot of incentive for them to sell that, especially if they look at it and go, okay, well, I can go out and I can rent that property for $4,500 a month. They've got a mortgage payment of $2,000 a month on the house. I'm like, okay, well, I can make $2,500 a month straight away. Somebody else is going to pay my balance down, and that house that's now worth $800,000 that I paid $200,000 for, or whatever, is likely going to be worth $1 million or $1.2 million or $1.5 million in the future. Why do I want to sell it? There's absolutely no incentive to sell it right now. So that's happening. And so what we're seeing is, we get calls a lot where people are like, oh, I need to tap into the equity. I want to do a refinance. I'm like, well, depending on what the rate is that you have, maybe you do, maybe you don't. If you have a good interest rate, which most people do, then you go out and get some sort of a home equity loan.
Yep.
Yeah, the home equity loans, people are like, oh, the rates suck. They're at 5% or they're at 6%. I'm like, yeah, so what? You have a 3% loan. Your alternative is you can go out and take on a 5% loan for the full $500,000, or you can keep your 3% loan for your $400,000 that you owe right now and go out and pay 6% on your $100,000 line of credit you're going to use for your down payment for the next property. Your weighted average interest rate is way lower if you leave the loan that you have in place right now and get a home equity loan, even though the rate's higher, way lower than it would be to go out and get a brand new loan right now.
Yes.
So,
Exactly.
we're seeing, people doing that. So, anyway, yeah.
No, I think that's really interesting stuff, and I love the creativity that people are employing because they have earned money. That house is an investment piece in their fuller portfolio, and it is delivering dividends right now.
I talk to people a lot where, they might be my age, where, I'm in my 50s and they've got older kids and they're like, okay, well, I'm not that far away from like making that next transition in life where we're empty nesters. And what are we going to do then? We're going to buy, a smaller place. Are we going to keep the existing place that we own? Whatever, But a lot of people have got a plan where they're like, okay, you know what? I've got this piece of real estate. I've got that piece of real estate. I've got this other piece of real estate. Ultimately, when I do retire, I'm going to consolidate that and get it into one position where I'm going to take equity from here and pay this off. I talk to people about this all the time, where it's like part of a bigger kind of puzzle, and they've got like different pieces of it that are going to do different things for them at various points in the future in their life. So something we talk about, and I think it's part of, you look at what we do and you look at what you do. Both pieces of it are part of a bigger financial picture, financial plan for people. So it's like all right, you're a realtor, yeah, you are, but you're also somewhat of a financial planner. I'm a mortgage person, okay, yeah, I am, but I'm also somewhat of a financial planner. So we have to ask the hard questions. We have to ask the people, take a little bit deeper dive and figure out like what is the end game for these guys. Oftentimes I find it interesting, but it also helps me to then make a suggestion to the buyer that may be more appropriate if I know what their plan is, not just now and what we're staring in front of me, what we have in front of us now, but like what are they doing in 10 years? What are they doing in 15 years? And it's, I think it helps, and helps people to if you show that, hey, I care about that stuff, people like that. And the reality of it is we should be offering that type of knowledge. This is what we do, right? And it's like, if you come to a doctor or you come to an expert, whatever it is that you're going to seek the advice, listen to what they have to say, and we should be asking the probing questions that we can then give them the appropriate recommendations.
It's funny. Thanks for joining Rob and I. We've had a great time. I've learned a whole lot. Always, though, every time I get on a conversation with you, it's just a learning process for me, and you make me a better realtor.
I appreciate that. I appreciate your support, and I'll come back to the Garage Mahal anytime. I enjoy doing this here. What a great place to do the class. Yeah.